Hey, what's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I have a brand new film to talk to you guys about coming out of Landmark Studios and Tokyo Shock, Japan on October 19th. It's called Ouija Japan. Ouija Japan is ultimately about a group of housewives that go on a camping trip together where they end up playing Kokuri-san, the Japanese version of Ouija. Only when they start playing the game, that's when a strange spirit wearing a fox mask shows up and forces them to kill each other in an all-out battle royale situation, because if they refuse, this spirit will be the one to kill them. So I'll admit the main thing that attracted me to seeing this movie was the Japanese version of Ouija, Kokuri-san, which I did not know too much about before I saw this movie. Turns out it's exactly the same thing as Ouija with slight rules changed, like instead of a planchette with a glass viewfinder, the spirit inhabits and moves a coin to either specific letters or a yes and no answer. That aspect of the film, while not scary necessarily, was interesting, albeit a bit typical in terms of what you expect from films like this. But after these women play Kokuri-san, that's when things get really interesting, because this film is something that mixes two horror elements, Ouija and the Japanese battle royale. Even though it doesn't make a ton of sense for a spirit in a board game to force people to kill themselves in a battle royale situation, it was interesting because the way they did it was through a haunted app. These women all end up with a weird app on their phone that has something to do with the battle royale, and every time one of these characters is killed off, the app unlocks some kind of mystical ability, like you've unlocked God's Eye, which means that you can watch people wherever they are on the site, even without cameras. Or you might have an in-app purchase, like Tripwire, that just shows up conveniently placed for the next person to trip on and blow up. Hey, that might help Wile E. Coyote. So a bit of that was slightly cartoony, but still it felt original to a degree because they didn't just go the basic paranormal route. You see a movie called Ouija Japan and you think it'll just be a Japanese remake of Ouija, or Ouija Origin of Evil, since that movie was better. But no, this is something else. But it should be known that this film isn't exactly a masterpiece either, and it has quite a few issues that it runs into. First of all, there is something going on with the ADR work, especially when some of these Japanese characters are speaking English. Whenever that would happen, since this is a movie that seems to be half in Japanese and half in English, whenever they would speak English, it would be an obvious change in volume, in tone, and you could tell it's a dub. I almost want to say their voice itself changes, but I can't say for certain because the actors are definitely moving their lips in a way that signifies they're speaking English. That switch in ADR is too noticeable in my opinion. Also, there are some editing choices that I didn't particularly enjoy, as it doesn't flow together naturally, and I'm thinking that has to do mostly with transitions or establishing shots that just don't exist at times. Also, there's some tonal shifts in the film that make it feel like they didn't necessarily know what kind of movie they wanted to make or be, especially in character personalities, which by the way was never great because most of these women blend in together. You know, one actress who is supposed to be the American in the group is probably the main character, but you really don't know that much about her other than she just moved to Japan for her husband, who was probably the worst actor in the film. But you don't know much more about her than that, and you essentially know next to nothing about any of the other characters. So that means when people die, you just don't care. Look, if you are in a battle royale situation, the biggest thing that you want to have is characters that you can root for and a wide assortment of diversity among them. Diversity in experiences, culture, language, likes, dislikes. Make everybody incredibly relatable in one form or fashion. That way, it'll be so much more effective when they get picked off one by one. That's just my 2 cents about it though. Let's go ahead and break down my final score for a second. From a technical, unbiased perspective, you know that the film is indie, which means it does run into some constraints as far as what they can do on a technical basis. So a lot of this film is mostly business as usual stuff where nothing shouts out as great, but some things shout out as not so great. Like the fact that sometimes it feels like they're filming this in somebody's backyard, which is not the feeling that you're supposed to get with a movie like this. So this score is 48%. As for how I personally felt about the film, or my bias score, this is even lower than that because, for the most part, most of my enjoyment came down to an interest into the direction that it took. which did feel original, but that was mostly just a kind of a low bar of intrigue, which doesn't fix a lot of the issues that it does run into. So for me, my bias score is 32%, meaning that when we combine the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 40%. 40 out of 100 possible stars, or a D- letter grade on my letter grading scale. Guys, have you seen Ouija Japan? And if so, lay your thoughts about it down below in the comments. And as for YouTube, you know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need